The question in first take is James Harden a top 5 NBA player in the game today? Far bearing, guys. We've had around 6 months of basketball from the very beginning of the season, playing around 60 games, and then the coronavirus did hit. So within this time period, this question is going to pertain to those, of course, first 60 games of the NBA season. I know it's been 2 months since the games hasn't been played at all. Everything's been on a pausing period. But we're going to evaluate, try to remember the things back in the past right there. We are on the first take episode where, of course, we have Stephen A. Smith, Max Kellerman, and we do have a guest, Jay Williams. So the question is, James Harden, top 5 NBA player. On my side, guys, and I'll go more in depth as we kind of chime in into the video. Number 1, I do have LeBron James. Number 2, I do have Giannis Antetokounmpo. Number 3, I do have Kawhi Leonard. Number 4, Luka Doncic, and number 5, James Harden. These are the players that are not injured. If I were to put more of a injured list onto this, I definitely would have had KD and Steph Curry in the mix. But since they haven't been playing pretty much this whole season, I'm going to lead them off just for right now. But when it comes to 1 through 3, LeBron, Giannis, and Kawhi Leonard, those three could be interchangeable. Kawhi Leonard did just come off winning Finals MVP, and during the summer, or last summer, we saw Kawhi Leonard as possibly being the greatest player in the NBA. Today, I don't have a problem with anyone who did state that. I know it was either Kawhi or kind of LeBron and Giannis, somewhere in that mix. Kawhi did take down Giannis in the conference finals, but Giannis is having another stellar regular season. Probably going to cop off with his second MVP, as well as LeBron still fighting. He had a great momentum when LeBron defeated Kawhi Leonard, the Clippers, and then the next following matchup against the Bucks and Giannis. But for right now, within those three, I don't have a problem if anyone has their different order. But when it comes to 4 and 5, Luka and James Harden. But let's see what Max Kellerman, Stephen A., and Jay Williams say about this. Real quickly, when it comes to James Harden and the Houston Rockets, Harden has been a top 5 player for the last 5 or 6 seasons. A lot of people have discussed and thought he's probably should have won 3 MVPs by now, or possibly even 2. When we look back in 2015, Steph Curry and James Harden were going back and forth in that MVP race talk. During that time period, that was the first year the Warriors pretty much came out of nowhere. Most of us and myself were expecting the Warriors at that time to be around a 5th seed. And within that, they jumped actually to a 1st seed, finishing with 67-15, the NBA's best record, and taking it by storm. They were an electric show. Media outlets were on Stephen Curry as the golden boy. During that same conference, the Houston Rockets were in 2nd place, and that's when James Harden had to take on the load. Dwight Howard was out around 30 to 40 games that season with an injury, and Harden was going ballistic. I believe the Rockets finished around 57-25, somewhere around that range. Personally, for me, as an MVP, I would have put in Harden to be the regular season MVP. But looking at performance from Steph Curry and the crew, no one really expected that. So I don't have a problem with that. The next year would have to be in 2017 when it was against Russell Westbrook and James Harden. Again, during that regular season, that's when Kevin Durant left. The Thunder, Russ had to propel his team to 6th seed, as well as the Rockets with James Harden had a ballistic, amazing year, pulling up 40 to 50-point games like it was nothing, as we're kind of seeing today during this day and age. The Rockets, I believe they finished around the 3rd seed, if I'm not mistaken, somewhere around, yeah, I think it was the third seed, and they went against the Spurs in the second round, losing to them. Yeah, but whenever it came to the Rockets, James Harden, I thought he was the clear front MVP. But as the season kind of progressed, we saw something new with Russell Westbrook recording the most amount of triple doubles, something averaging something we haven't seen till Oscar Robertson back in the day. But with Russell Westbrook, it was a better storyline. I don't have a problem they gave it to Russ. Because especially during the last 2 to 3 weeks of that stretch, Russ was hitting a game winner over on the Denver Nuggets. He was just going ballistic, and it was just something. He had the momentum at the very end. It was very close. It was probably around a 55-45% Russ and then Harden. Finally, in 2018, James Harden finally got his first MVP. Well, much deserved. The Rockets were in first place. And then they did lose in the conference finals in 7 games to the Warriors. But then now we're over here, 2019, 2020. More people had, we're kind of thinking 2019 it should go to James Harden. Whenever it was against him and Giannis Antetokounmpo, I agree it was with Giannis. I don't want to go too much into that right now. But now we're in 2020. Harden's not even in the MVP picture anymore for the last 5 or so years. Whenever it comes to Harden being a top 5 player, he's hovering around that 5 or 6 spot. I definitely have him as number 5. But that's something we can see the history of James Harden. Okay, so I don't know if they're going to have the criteria if you're injured or not. As I said in the very beginning of this video, if we're talking about players who are not injured playing for this whole season, then yeah, James Harden's number 5 as of right now. And whenever it comes to, Steph Curry and KD, they've been hurt. But if we're actually to do on based on durability to where everyone's healthy, then that's a different list for me. Harden's definitely not making the top 5, as well as that would have to be a debate within Luka or not. Probably, I would say probably in this time period, maybe not, because you have not Harden, you have Curry and KD hurt as of right now. But my top 5, if we're to be everyone's healthy, number 1, I got LeBron James. Number 2, I would have to go with Kawhi Leonard or Giannis Antetokounmpo on that 2 or 3 spots. Number 4, I would probably either go with Steph Curry or KD as the 4 and 5 slots. I've always had Curry always better than KD in his career. Since starting from 2015, 2016, Steph Curry's always been the main dog, as well as the foundation of that career and that whole dynasty. Even though when KD did join around in 2017 through 2019, I know they were feeding KD the ball more, making more the main centric because he felt out of place. But Steph Curry was the foundation of that team. Even when Curry was hurt, KD still couldn't propel them to a winning record. And whenever KD was hurt, Steph Curry took him back to the finals. But that'll be another topic and discussion for another day, for another video. But yeah, guys, whenever it comes to players being healthy, Harden's not a top 5 player. Not in this day and age anymore. Listen, this notion that everyone's saying that James Harden chokes and falls off in the playoffs, that's very overstretched. We got to remember, guys, for the last 5 seasons that the Rockets have lost in the playoffs was to who? The Golden State Warriors. Starting from 2015, they got to the conference finals. They lost to the Warriors. Everyone expected the Warriors to win in 5 or 6 games. The Rockets were finally up and coming. They did have Dwight Howard at the time. The next following year, 2016, the Rockets were an 8 seed. They fell off that regular season. Everything was not working, and I think, yeah, they lost in 5 games in the first round. And then the following year, now we have 2017. The Rockets are picking things back up. They were the 3rd seed. They lost in the second round to the San Antonio Spurs. Harden did choke in that game 6. It was very suspect. He only scored, I think, around 8 points or so. So if you want to create that narrative around him, a lot of people always pointed to that game 6 against the Spurs, which I don't know. He seemed uninterested. I don't know if there was something that was scripted, if they told him to rig it. Who knows? Falling up to the next year, 2018, when Harden became his first MVP, they were 67-15. They were the favorites to win the NBA championship alongside with the Warriors. We saw with the Rockets, they had a 3-2 lead. Chris Paul got hurt. And then in that game 6, they were actually up around 15 points in the second or third quarter. And then the Warriors just were dynamic, came back, took them out. And then game 7, same thing. Rockets were always up around 11 to 12 points that they had the home court. And then Harden and the crew, they missed around 27 threes in a row. Something historic just like that, falling off very, very short. But then, kind of falling a little fourth. 2019, we expected this could finally be the year for the Rockets again. And then they lose to the Warriors in 6. The series was tied 2-2. KD was finally hurt. And the Rockets had no excuse to lose that series, but they did. But now you have the Rockets right now, 2020. We don't know what will happen with them in the playoffs. But Harden, whenever they say he's an underperformer in the playoffs, guys, he lost to the Warriors, one of the greatest teams of all time, a dynasty, even without KD. So you can't blame him within that, losing to one of the greatest teams of all time, back and forth. Harden's led his team to the conference finals multiple times, taken to a game 7 of the conference finals. We haven't seen that yet for Giannis Antetokounmpo. We've seen that with Kawhi Leonard, LeBron James getting it done with, Steph Curry. KD already took his team to the finals in 2012 with Harden on the team. Luka hasn't been there yet. So, I mean, I believe that is a stretch. Harden's taken on so much of the offensive set within him. And this is something I don't blame him with. I'm actually, whenever you look at his career, if his peak was game 7 of the conference finals, that's still great. But he needs to at least get to one finals if he wants to be in that Barkley class. listen again. Whenever Max Kellerman's knocking for not making it to a finals, 4 out of the last 5 years he's been in the playoffs, he's lost to the Golden State Warriors. The Warriors have been to the finals 5 years in a row. They were a dynasty. This is something you can't knock Harden on. You can't. I mean, you could tic tac and knock him off. Little things again, losing a 3-2 lead against the Warriors, losing the game 7 at home, losing against the Warriors whenever KD was hurt when there was a series tied 2-2. Besides that, it's not a big knock on Harden. Harden's not a top 15, top 20 player NBA of all time. So you can't rank him within that. He's probably more around top 35, top 40, probably even lower. I have to check my list to actually evaluate. But Max Kellerman's reaching all that. Oh man, Shay. That's what I've been saying. All right. In the 2016 NBA Finals, whenever the Warriors blew the 3-1 lead to the Cleveland Cavaliers, this notion that Steph Curry and some of the other players were hurt, that's ridiculous. 2015, LeBron didn't even have Anderson Varejao, Kevin Love, or as well as Kyrie Irving, and still took him to 6 games. A hard-fought battle. In 2016, when it came to the Warriors, they were healthy. People were saying Iguodala was hurt. He was still on the floor. They still had a number of their whole foundation to win that series. Even when Draymond was out of Game 5, the Warriors were still favorites to win it. So you can't use that as an excuse. No one ever talked about Steph Curry. And whenever talked about Steph Curry, he just seemed uninterested. He didn't seem he was injured at all. He may have been a little. It's the playoffs, guys. It's the finals. Everyone's not always healthy. There's going to be some fouls. If you're on the floor, that's all that matters. If you're up 3-1, you cannot blow that lead. Whenever it comes to James Harden, yes, he had his moments in the playoffs to where he didn't get it done with. Therefore, again, he is going against one of the greatest dynasties of all time. It's not a knock on him. Yeah, I'm gonna leave it off on here, but James Harden right now, top 5 NBA player in the game. If there's injuries with Steph Curry and KD and they're disqualified, then yes. But whenever you have Steph and KD coming back the following season, then that's gonna have to be adjusted. We're gonna have to see how these playoffs do turn out to be. It's unfortunate the Rockets, they've had an iffy season. You putting in Russell Westbrook on the team with them, trading away Clint Capella, going to small ball. They are a 6 seed right now, fighting for a fourth or fifth that they could probably finish off with. But this is something to where the Rockets are probably going to be a first round, second round exits within this year. So with James Harden, he's got some work to do with the new coaches, team, and his game of play.